that aspect of the economy, why didn't we look at, we know that we've always had these challenges, because this is not the first time we're going to be talking about this. We know we've always had these challenges. So why is it that no mechanism was put in place to forestall this challenge repeating itself again?
You see, the problem is that Nigeria operates one of the most expensive processes on the port. Why? If you look at Ghana, you look at Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. Nigeria controls 78% of the cargo interest, 78% within this operation. And we are losing our cargo to this area. Why do you say why? When we are political, we don't look at the professional aspect of how process and procedures are done. We play politics with it. We don't look at the future of the economy. The truth about it is that when you don't have a commercial regulator, nobody regulates it. The Nigerian ports cannot regulate. The transport ministry cannot regulate because there's no law that says they are going to regulate. Now, in the concession, in the West African port, for instance, West Africa operates a corporatized port. You have almost the same principle with Singapore. America operates a port that is still public because their port is actually run by the counties. But in our own system, we operate a port that is not defined properly because our law is saying different thing. What we operate in the port is quite different. And that is why you find out the port is expensive. We have got 3 or 4 approvals on storage charges, which actually is not controlled by the process. When you go to Ghana, Ghana have a consortium. And that consortium, you have Ghana Meridian Port Services, where you have the same APMT that is here. You have Belore, then you have the government of Ghana. And they come under the consortium, which is a joint venture, to operate. And 30% of that, the whole shares, is for the government. 70% is for the consortium. Then the throughput, that is the cargo. The cargo in Ghana is 25% is for the government. So you find that Ghana government, Ghana Harbour Ports Authority is still operating port operation. They can still employ, they regulate, and control the traffic. So they are in charge. But in this case of Nigeria, nobody is in charge. The concessionaires are in charge. For instance, when you go to America, America have in their Federal Maritime Commission, it controls the terminal operators and the shipping company. In Nigeria, nobody controls the terminal operators and the shipping company. Shipping companies run at their own. And what is the work of a shipping company, for instance? They don't have forklifts, they don't do anything, and they are charging. So you have a lot of these charges that are there that are creating problems in the port. So when you're talking about foreign direct investment, it's not going to be possible if actually you don't have a regulatory process to control our commercial activities in the port. That is the truth. So when you go around in South Africa, you have independent port regulator in South Africa. So where do we operate? What kind of system do you operate? If you go to government, say it is a landlord. Landlord on what? On law or on the concession contract? So
we're not just getting enough as we should be getting from the ports.
The truth about it is that if you pick the costs in terms of doing business in Nigeria and Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin Republic, are our strong competitors. They are strong competitors because we control the market, we have the cargo, but we don't control the procedures. So they siphon our cargo, and they are building their ports. For instance, Nigeria is talking about deep sea port. Deep sea port is not a political port. Deep sea port, you just need one deep sea port that is going to be a load center or a preferred port or a transshipment center, so that you'll be able to accommodate most of the cargo we are losing to our neighboring countries. For instance, you see, Ivory Coast, for instance, is almost a transshipment center. And within this West and Central African sub-region, we need 2 transshipment centers. And the truth about it is that these people are building their port for us. We are talking about building almost 3 deep sea ports. You don't need 3 deep sea ports because port, you don't just build ports. You must build ports when you have the cargo. In Nigeria, for instance, you are building ports in places like Akwa Ibom. Where is the industry there to actually attract the cargo to that area? So you don't just build the deep sea port. When you have that kind of deep sea port all over the place, it's not for look, we have built port like Sapele, we have built port like Warri, we have built port like Calabar, and all these ports, and you have commissioned a port in Onitsha. We are not looking at the feasibility report to look at what attracts a port. We look at the political situation to build a port.
Well, let's look at one of the major players in the port industry, the Nigeria Customs Service, and you are a member of the Presidential Committee on
the reform of customs.
Customs reforms.
Yeah.
Now, Nigeria Customs Service plays a major role in fiscal policy implementation, especially as it relates to tariff and import prohibitions. With all the scenario that you've painted now, it doesn't really look like the customs is really discharging its responsibility as well as it should. Well,
when you look at the customs, the problem about the customs is the customs is an international agency that's supposed to implement government policy. They are not policy makers. And when you place custom as a political organization, start to go into a ministerial area, move into areas that you don't have supposed to do all over the world, custom is to implement policies, drive the policies and implement them. The Ministry of Finance or any of the Ministry of Finance, Trade, or the President come out with the policies, and why the custom implement them. Custom is not to make policies. Custom is to implement policies and drive revenue for government and other aspects. But lately, we notice that it has stretched politically, and we believe that there's need for us to look at custom professionally. The custom is to look at procedures, classification, valuation. And this classification and valuation must be based on the principle of the law. Valuation, actually, we have a valuation principle that have to do with Act 20 of 2003. And it's sequential. You don't impose value. And why that is done is the WTO and WCO material. It's a transaction value that have to actually be done on a transparent basis. But the truth about it is that when you are not trained to look at procedure on the basis of the law, you have a law that is passed, you need to follow that law. That is what WTO and WCO said. And when you have a process that said, look, you have to go to dispute resolution. And this dispute resolution is that if you have a resolution, a dispute within the area, you have to go through the customs. From the customs, you go to the finance ministry. From the finance ministry, then you go to the court. But for now, we notice that those mechanisms are not in place, even though it is contained in the import guideline on paragraph 20, 21, 22.
Could it be because the Nigeria Customs views itself as a revenue collector, just as a revenue collector?
Well, for now, revenue collection in the world in WTO is not relevant. Nobody talk about revenue. What we talk about is security. Everybody in the world is talking about security. For instance, what do you talk about revenue when you go to the north now? The whole place is under siege. And nobody in the world. The world started in 2001. You have this 9/11 attack. And the 9/11 attack brought about the ISPS code, under the International Shipport Facility Security Code, which is the SOLAS. And in the SOLAS 1974, it actually developed a concept to take care of port and the ships, the facility in the port and the ship. And the taking care of the cargo is not taken care of. So on the basis of that, the cargo, which is the paramount issue that have to do with smuggling of arms, bringing in elements that are criminal and destructive, are not taken care of. So WCO, under the resolution 9 of the Conference of Contracting Parties, now came out with a resolution that we have to look at the logistic chain and see how to protect them. On the basis of that, the safe framework was developed in 2005. And America actually looked at it, came out with almost 3 laws. And one actually have to do with the Port Accountability Security of Every Port Act of 2006. And that port is a safe framework. It was developed from the safe framework. And what has happened is that they have changed the procedures of doing business in the whole world. If you look at, everybody is now working in terms of being security conscious. And that is why you see the safe framework is talking about securing global trade. While the Kyoto Convention is talking about facilitation of trade. There are 2 things. And these 2 instruments are from WCO. So, and securing and facilitating trade in terms of the Kyoto Convention is talking about all the procedures that must facilitate trade. Talking about the risk, talking about advanced ruling, talking about pre-arrival. These are technical issues that I don't want to bother you with. But the truth about it is the safe framework have 2 critical instruments. One is custom to customs. One is custom to business partnership. And the business partnership is that you are involving all the transport logistics chain in the process of the clearance. That means from the exporter's warehouse to